Hello, friends. Are you ready to learn to watercolor with the Spotlight on Nature rubber stamps? Let's be honest, though. I'm going to share some basics of watercoloring with you, some things that I have learned over the years, but I am by no means a watercolor expert. But I do love how easy it is to create a watercolor picture or watercolor image using rubber stamps as the base, because you don't actually have to make the image yourself, right? Just like with everything else with rubber stamps. Before I get started, if you are here and joining me live, leave me a comment. Let me know where you are joining from. If you're watching the replay, special welcome to you as well. I love all my replay warriors that come later and watch the replays. So leave me a comment. Let me know that you watched the replay. If this is your first time here, welcome. I am Heidi with Onigo Stamping, and I'm going to help you reconnect with your inner artist by using stamps, ink, and paper to create beautiful handmade cards and gifts. All right, I'm going to flip my camera, not really flip my camera, make my space look a little bit bigger. Hello, Jamie, and hello, Louise. So glad you guys are here. That was not the one I wanted. There we go. All right, these have got to move around though. All right, now we're in business. Hello, Kathleen and Amy. I am so glad y'all are here. All right. Here is the Spotlight on Nature stamp set, which I think is an absolute beautiful stamp set. Beautiful, beautiful images here that have lots of detail to them. This is what we're going to be using to stamp tonight. I've also got the Spotlight on Nature dies, the deckled circle dies. I got some water painters, and most importantly, I have Fluid 100 watercolor paper. If you are going to watercolor, the most important thing is to use watercolor paper if you really want to do some good watercoloring. So I'm using the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. It's got good tooth to it. It's got lots of texture on it so that it's going to soak up the water. It's nice and thick. And I'm going to grab the dies first, and we're going to decide which dies we're going to use. You just ordered this bundle on free shipping day, Kimberly. That is a smart plan. This is a good one. All right, so the Spotlight and Nature dies, they coordinate with the stamps. But unlike most of the die sets that Stampin' Up! Has, this one has nothing to do. I feel like it has nothing to do with the stamp set. It is just a fabulous set of circle dies with different patterns on them. And you can actually see there's multiples. So I want one of these that has like a floral pattern. I think I want this great big giant one right here. So I'm going to grab that out, and then we're going to pick which deckled circle die is going to work best with that, because there is a lot to choose from. Check out how big these are. They're about as big as my hand, and there are tons of them to choose from. So I just want to choose one that is going to be just a little bit smaller. So I think that's going to be this one right here is going to work well. And this is what I'm going to cut my watercolor paper with. So we'll set these aside. I'm going to use the deckled circle die to cut my watercolor paper. And I'm going to use the Spotlight on Nature die to cut some pretty and pink paper. So let's go ahead. We're going to do this little bit of die cutting first. I think I'm going to be able to do both of these in one cut. So there is my watercolor paper, and then my Pretty in Pink. Pretty in Pink is, of course, one of this year's in colors that I love. I'm going to run this through my cut and emboss machine that is over here on my shelf, knocking stuff down as I always do. I'm just going to run this through. Oh, all right, we ran that through. Janet, you just ordered this week too. Good. Yeah, it's a good choice. All right. So here is this pretty set. Now those little bits are stuck in there. I might have to pull out my my sticking this. All right, here is the watercolor paper. And while we got this, I'm going to show you my trick for getting out these little doodads. Got to get down here in my drawers. Maybe if I can get in the right drawer. There it is. All right, and this tip comes from Jamie, who was here a minute ago. But what I have is I just have an old paper pumpkin box, and then I have the big foam mat, and I'm going to use the Take Your Pick tool with this little brush tip end on it. And I'm just going to put my die cut piece on that little foam mat and just brush over it with this little brush. And this is going to help get out all those little pieces. Now, why the paper pumpkin box? Well, let me tell you why the paper pumpkin box. Because now all these little bits of paper are going into the paper pumpkin box instead of going on my floor. And if I want to empty out the little bits from the paper pumpkin box, it's coated, so they kind of tend to come out of it pretty easily if you want to throw those away. There we go. So all in there. And then I just close this up and I store it just like that in my drawer. So it's always ready to go. And now you can see we have all those bits out. We have a couple little circles from something else I did. So now let's get to the watercoloring. I have my deckled circle here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp my image. For tonight, I'm using the Saddle Brown Stays On. This is just like the Jet Black Stays On that you've probably seen me use before, but it is brown. Did you even know that Stampin' Up! Has the Saddle Brown Stays On ink pad? I didn't realize it for a long time, but I'm excited that I did because it's really nice. All right, with the Stays On ink, this is a solvent-based ink. So it's really good for watercoloring because it's going to be permanent, but it comes with a little plastic cover over the ink pad. Don't throw that away. You want to keep that in there so that it helps keep your pad wet. And I pop that in, I put it in the top of my case. So when I put the top on, it goes on automatically. I'm going to grab my little flower stamp here. These tulips or whatever they are. Actually, you know what? I'm going to stamp something else first. I'm going to stamp the butterfly first. So just inking up the butterfly. I'm going to stamp the butterfly up here. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful and brown. You forgot to order the brown again, Jamie, right? I do that all the time. I just placed, an order on Tuesday for free shipping. I forgot to order more basic beige cardstock and more pretty and pink cardstock, and I'm almost out of both, which is really sad. All right. So there's my flowers and my butterfly. So pretty. I love that. I love the saddle brown. It's just a really pretty color. All right. So now the fun part. Now is when we get to start watercoloring. I am using the water painters. The water painters come in 3 sizes. They come in a set of 3. You'll see there's like a rounded thick one, a flat thick one, and these are just stained. And then a smaller one. I think I'm going to use this one. We'll see. We'll see what I do. I'm actually just going to squeeze out some of the paper. So you put water in the barrel of this, which means that it's really good for watercoloring on the go because you don't have to worry about having that, cup of water on your stamp table that you end up knocking over, because let's face it, that's what we do. So, but sometimes I want to use a little bit more water. So I am going to just squeeze a little bit out on my clear block here, which just works as kind of like a palette. The one thing that you have to keep in mind with these water painters, the tops screw on and off backwards. So you'll sit there and you think you're like you're screwing it tight, and you're not. You're like unscrewing it. It just, yeah. All right, let me see. And sometimes you have to loosen it to get some water out. All right, there's our water. It is now flowing. So what I want to do first of all, when I start watercoloring, is I'm going to start actually with the background on this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my water painter, and I'm just going to paint water. I'm just getting the surface wet, because when you are doing watercolor, what is going to happen is that the ink, anywhere the paper is wet, it is going to run through the wetness. All right, it's going to run in that liquid that's on there. Anywhere the paper is dry, it's going to stop. So what I'm doing is I am just adding a little bit of water around the images, because I'm going to paint the background first, and I just want to use a little bit of ink and kind of let it flow through the wet areas. All right. And I think I'm gonna try not to go all the way to the outside edge of the circle. I kind of want to leave some white at the edge. I'm also not going all the way up to the images. I'm gonna leave a little bit of white in front of the images, or around the images, I should say. All right, I'm gonna go over its antenna though. So I'm just adding water. And that's why I know you can't really see this, right? You tried to order the set and it was unavailable. Yeah, Lynn, it was unavailable. Just to let you know, it is back in stock though. I just looked at it today, and it did go unavailable. The stamp set was out of order, out of stock on Tuesday afternoon, but it is now back in stock. It's a nice thing about the stamp sets because they're made right in Utah. They do tend to come back in stock very quickly, much more quickly than other things. All right, we got some water on there. Now I want to grab some ink. I'm going to grab some Pool Party ink. You can use re-inkers. I'm just going to grab the ink pads, and what I do is I just take a clear block and I just put some ink right on it. It's the exact same thing as using a re-inker. It's easier. I don't know. It's easier for me than getting out a re-inker. All right, I'm going to use some water. I'm going to pick up, plus sometimes I don't have re-inkers of every color. So I'm picking up ink, I'm picking up water. We're just going to come in here. Now, can you see how it's running in that water area? So I'm not even really doing much here so far. I might have to do a little bit more in some areas, but I'm just kind of letting it, I'm pushing it around through the water. So, and this is just going to take me a minute to go back over all of this. Just picking up some more of that Pool Party. I really kind of want it light, so I'm keeping it pretty wet. Come in here. And just putting it all in there. I'm going to pick up a little more ink, a little more water. Now you can see it's starting to get dry over here, which means that it's going on darker and it's not flowing as much. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to try to get some of the blue out of here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just push this. Now I have this really old receiving blanket that is covered in ink. I'm just going to push some water out. You got to unscrew it just a little bit. I'm going to push some water out. What I do is I like to hold on to that brush tip, because if you don't, the ink has a tendency, if you don't wipe out the ink, it tends to get sucked back up into the barrel of the watercolor brush, which I don't want to happen. So that's why I use this old receiving blanket that is covered in ink and pretty sad looking, but it works. So I got out some more just water. Still kind of got a lot of blue going on here, but that's okay because we're still using blue. So just adding more water in here. We'll pick up just a little bit of blue. Add that around the outside. You have a little bit more of the Pool Party. And keeping it nice and watered down. Just coming in and getting in the small areas with my brush. And I think that's all I'm going to do on the blue, because I want to keep that pretty nice and light. So, all right, I'm going to let that sit. I'm going to try to squeeze out some more of this ink. See if I can show you how I do this. So I just squeeze it and just kind of wipe. So we're getting some extra water coming out and then wiping out the ink, because otherwise the water sucks back up into the barrel and then your water ends up blue. So, all right. Now I want to kind of try to get this dry, because if I come in and I try to color I try to color the images, there's a good chance I'm going to end up bleeding out into the background. So I'm going to try to get this just a little bit dry. I'm going to pull out my heat tool and just kind of use some air to just dry it a little bit. So Teresa, this is the Fluid 100 watercolor paper, specifically designed for watercoloring. All right, just going to come in and dry this up a little bit. Now you could just let this sit and it would naturally dry before you move on. But I don't have time for that. So I'm going to artificially dry it with my heat tool. And it wants to roll around. That's pretty good. All right, so there we go. Show that to you. There's the background. Now we can come in and let's start doing some other stuff on here, shall we? Should we start coloring our flower? I'm going to try to get out, I'm going to get out a little more water again. And once again, I'm going to come in to that flower and I'm just going to add some water to them. Just adding a little water to my flowers. There we go. And then the flower, I'm going to paint pretty in pink. So I'm going to pull out my pretty in pink. I'm just going to use this other side of the same clear block. So there we go. And then I'm going to pick up a little water, a little pretty in pink, and I'm going to start at the bottom and let it kind of flow up and out into the petals as much as possible. It's just going to kind of give us a darker color at the bottom. And if you get less water, so if I pick up more ink and less water, it's going to give you a darker color. So you can just use the same colors to do a little bit of shading. There we go. Make sure this next flower is nice and wet. We'll come in and just add some pink to that one too. And again, I'm going to come in the bottom and add a little bit more. It's a little bit drier. You can also let this dry a little bit and then come back and add some more dark color to the bottom. I'm just laughing just a little bit because Lynn said she is struggling with the trying to open the water painters yesterday. It's true. Like, it doesn't make any sense. They go backwards. All right. So I could let this dry a little bit and then come back in with a little bit drier ink and it will kind of like layer up. Kind of let this dry a little bit. I can come in with some drier and make more kind of shading and stuff, right? So there we go. There's our tulips. A little more pink over here. And it just takes time to sit here and fiddle with it and keep watercoloring it. All right, I'm gonna open this up again and squeeze out some water, get some of that ink out because we're gonna change colors again. All right, I'm gonna come up here, I'm gonna do my butterfly. So I'm gonna get his wings nice and wet with a little ink. And then let's get another clear block out because that one's pretty full. I'm going to grab some Daffodil Delight ink. So for the watercolors, I'm using Fluid 100 watercolor paper. There's my Daffodil ink. I'm just going to pick up some of this and I'm going to do the top of the butterfly's wings. So this isn't flowing a ton, but that's okay because we kind of want to keep it in here. So nice, pretty yellow, beautiful. Squeeze this out a little bit. Ooh, too much water. All right, I'm going to grab some peach pie. I think I'm going to do both peach pie and some pumpkin pie. We're having lots of pie here. We're going to start with some peach. The watercolor paper is from Stampin' Up. Yep, you can get that right from Stampin' Up. Just as a reminder, as I'm coloring in this peach pie on here, when you order through me, if you order at least $75 in product in the month of May, you're going to get a free card kit for the June online card class. So kind of something special I have started as a little thank you. So just to let you know that. If you are on YouTube, my ordering link is right in the description to the video. All right, so I added a little bit of peach pie, but I'm gonna go ahead, I wanna get just a little bit darker. I'm gonna add some pumpkin pie too. So I'm gonna get this really nice and lots of orange on there and just add this down at the bottom. And look how it's running into, it's gonna mix itself. Isn't that pretty? All right. So now I'm going to dry this just a little bit because I don't want it to do anything more. And I might add just a little more. Ooh, look at that water run. So you saw that was really wet. When I hit it with the heat tool, it did a lot of running. Like the water was just kind of running everywhere. So that's one thing you have to watch for when you're using a heat tool to quick dry things, is that it can kind of push the color around more than you want. So, all right. There we go. There's our butterfly. Now, the only thing I have left to do is to do the stems. So let me move my inks out of the way. Let's grab some Granny Apple Green. Grab another clear block for this. I'm so glad that you guys are liking this. It does take some practice. It takes a little bit of practice, but it's pretty easy. And I love that I don't actually have to make the images myself. So this one, I'm just doing this pretty dry because this is a pretty small area on these leaves. So just coming in and adding that Granny Apple Green, and I can add a little bit more down towards the bottom, add some extra shading, pick up a little water. Come in here again. So again, when it's more wet, it's going to be lighter. If the brush is drier with more ink, you're going to get a darker color. I'm going to use a really dry brush to do the stems because it's so thin. If it got wet, it would start to run out into the edges. So I don't really want that. All right. Let's see, just a couple more little leaves. And we're going to call this done. We're going to put the rest of our card together. So just adding a little bit more shading on my leaves with a very dry brush. There we go. All right. We're going to call that good. What do you think? There is our watercolored image. So pretty. So yeah, I'm glad you guys are liking this too. All right, let's put this together into a card because it's nice to have a stamped image, but we want to have a card when we get done, right? So let's put this into a card. Just kind of wiping up some of my sloppy water here. All right, I have a piece of basic beige that is 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. And I have a piece of the, what is it? The 6x6 pattern paper, designer series paper in petal pink as well. And I'm going to wait to adhere that down. I want to do just a little bit of stamping. So I'm going to grab my saddle brown Stays On ink again. And again, I have that plastic bit just in the lid. And then I'm going to grab this little thanks stamp. And I'm just going to put that down here in the lower right-hand corner. There we go. So I just want to make sure that I got that stamped how I wanted it, where I wanted it, before I glue the paper on. So Jamie, you're making your shopping list. That's what I'm here for. You just need it all. All right, I'm using some green glue. When I use green glue, multi-purpose glue, I keep the tip really flat down to the surface of my paper so I don't get too much glue as I'm going along. I'm going to try to get this straight. This is kind of one of the good things for grid paper. I'm just going to line up my paper, my cardstock on the grid paper, and then I can line up along one of the lines on both sides, help me get my paper on here straight. It's a little bit too long. That's fine. I just was lazy. Didn't cut it the right length. Oh, that's smart. Yeah, put a glue dot on the inside cover. Very true. If you're worried about losing it, that would be a great idea. All right, so I'm just gonna snip off that end. So we have that paper on there, and I'm gonna add just a little bit of ribbon. I'm gonna use the basic beige bordered ribbon. It's a lot of bees in there. Oops, I have to get out my paper snips are definitely for paper. My ribbon paper snips are for ribbon. They cut much better. All right, I'm just gonna put this on here. I'm going to tape it on. So I'm just putting it where I want on the front, or flip it over. I have some Scotch tape here. And we'll just tape that down. We'll do the same thing on the other side, just easier. Right, there we go. And it just gives a nice extra line on there. All right, this is gonna go on a piece of basic beige. So I have a piece of 8.5 by 5.5 inch basic beige, scored at 4 1/4 for the card base. Just gonna give it a good smush with my bone folder. Jamie, you said you use 4 dimensionals and it keeps it better covered up. Yeah, I could see that, because I would be a little bit worried that you wouldn't like leave the right amount of space or something. I don't know. All right, this I'm just putting on with some green glue. I got too much there. So when I get too much green glue, I just take the tip and I pull it towards the inside, spread it out a little bit. You could also take a sponge to it, but that would be one more thing I have to get out. So I just like to use the tip. And this is gonna go on my card front. We're almost done. And I have 2 more samples to show you. Now the other 2 samples do not use watercoloring, because you can do all sorts of coloring with these stamps. So, all right, pull back in my big circle. Oh, I hope I stamped that thanks in the right place. Oh, I did, good. Because if it was a little bit over too far, it probably should have been a little bit more to the right, but it's okay. It's all right, it's all good. We'll put some green glue on this as well. And then I'm just going to adhere this to the front. Just like that. And now I'm going to pull out some Stampin' Dimensionals, because every card has to have some Stampin' Dimensionals. Hopefully this is this is pretty dry by now. I am down to the end of my sheet of Stampin' Dimensionals. What's new? It's like almost a daily occurrence. So I'm going to put some Stampin' Dimensionals on the back here. Put one in the center too. Oh, I have one left. I don't know. I almost feel like I should just put it on just to get rid of it. So just peel the backs off. And then this is going to go on our card front. Just like this. So sweet. So sweet, and pretty easy to do. So there we go. What do you think? There's our simple little thank you card. Not simple. You do have to use some watercoloring, but hopefully that shows you that watercoloring is not scary. You guys can do it. I know you can. It maybe will take a little bit of practice, but it shouldn't be scary, right? Let me show you the other 2 cards that I have. So this stamp set is also really good for doing some collage stamping, which is what I did here. I just used a lot of the different images from the stamp set and I stamped them to create the background. I used a blending brush to add different colors to it, made it all messy. And then I stamped the images on white colored them with Stampin' Blends, and then cut them out. I fussy cut those out. So really kind of a fun little deal there too. So some collage stamping with that. And then this one's the simple one. So this one, I stamped the images with Tuxedo Black Memento ink, because then I used my Stampin' Blends to color them in, okay, with Pretty in Pink and Lemon Lime Twist. And then there's a little tiny stamp in the stamp set. Let me show you this little speckle stamp right here. And so I wanted to make this look not too neat and pretty. So I came in with that little speckle stamp, and I stamped most of the speckle over the flowers and just like let little bits flow off the edges, because I didn't want it to be too much speckled. I just wanted to make it look like I had painted the flowers, but I'd been a little bit messy with it. So that's how I did that. And again, I used the Spotlight on Nature dies for the sentiment down here too. So these Spotlight on Nature dies are going to be awesome for all different sentiments, different stamp sets, not just the stamp set. All right, friends, thank you all so much for joining me tonight. I hope that you have enjoyed this. I will be back again on Tuesday night. We're going to do Stamp With Me Tuesday night. We're doing a technique. So watch for the supply list on Monday afternoon over in the Facebook group, or wherever else I put it. It'll be in the description to the video on YouTube as well. And I will see y'all on Tuesday to learn a new technique with y'all. So have a fabulous weekend, and I'll see you next week.